What's up YouTube, this is TyraniKing097 here with a video called Should You Start Fate Grand Order? Now, if you excuse me, this is recorded on my phone, so it'll have minimal editing because I don't have a PC or laptop at the moment. But if you recommend any software or apps that can help me edit, I would greatly appreciate it, and if you can leave it in the comments below. Now, onto the video. So, Fate Grand Order is a mobile game designed by Aniplex and Lysango with the help of Nasu and the Type Moon. So, it's based off the Fate franchise. And a lot of the collabs and stories and everything are based off the Fate characters that you'll see from the animes that are out or the manga, or some of the works of Type Moon, like Witch Under the Moonlight, I think, or not Witch Under the Moonlight, Night of the Witch. There we go, Night of the Witch, and Bloody Melty Blood, Type Lumina, or just Melty Blood, because I think some characters have appeared, but I'm not sure. Oh, and slight spoilers, by the way, for this video, because I will slightly go into part 2, but not fully for those who haven't played the game. But I will go into part 2 and 1.5 for a little bit. But that doesn't matter at the moment. So what matters is this is a mobile game, a gacha game, made by in collaboration with Type Moon, Lysango, Aniplex, and all those companies into one. Now, you're wondering, and because of all the hype around Fate Grand Order, the Fate series, the Fate franchise in general, is this mobile game worth playing? To my answer, as a 5-year FGO player from the very beginning of NA, and around, I would say, about 4 years in JP, I would say yes. It's a very giving gacha game in general. But I'll go the features to let you decide, because this is about you playing, if you want to play. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, let's start with the story. So, there are technically 3 story parts. The first one is the main story that you will get into when you first start. So, you'll find Fuyuki. You'll start in Fuyuki, all the way, and go Orleans, Septum, Okeanos, London, America, Camelot, and Babylonia, and then you'll find the final singularity, Solomon. Now this covers all of part 1. Part 1 is basically the game's easy mode, where you'll basically beat a few enemies. The waves are, there are 3 waves, sometimes 2 or 1, depending on the story of the game. But it's very easy, like very easy up to a point. Because depending on where you're at, like, obviously Fuyuki is the easiest because it's the starting point of the series, so they have to introduce you to the setting, to the power scaling of those enemies and stuff like that. But as you get further into the game, such as games do, the story will be more complex and the fights will be obviously harder. So, but you can, right now, I believe I don't know if there's a quarter campaign going on. I believe it's half off at the moment. Permanently, part 1 is permanently half off of the energy or the AP that you use, so you can save and level up really quickly, because of the help you have from the support servants that you have from your friends or from other players. Now, you can pretty much clear part 1 with basically the support servants that you have without leveling up most of your servants. But it really helps to level up your own servants and raise your own servants, because the first hurdle of part 1 is Camelot, and you'll get damage checked by a certain Praise the Sun boy. And it's it's a tough fight. Now, if you have the right servants that can help, that can obviously take him out, that's great. And the best part is that one of the servants that is needed to defeat him, or one of the strategies to defeat him, it involves a 3-star servant, which is not the lowest rarity, but still a rare servant, so it's easier to get than a 4 or 5-star servant, which is very helpful. And you can clear, and if you totally want to be free to play, that's fine. You don't need 4 or 5-star servants, but they help. After that, then it's Babylonia, which is like the final, not the final, but the final main story that released before the final Singularity. And that's, not gonna lie, that's gonna be one of the damage checks after Camelot, because those were some tough fights back when they first premiered, but nothing compared to the endgame content that is out right now in NA and especially in JP. Because part one is easy. You'll have it easy. So, but we're not talking about easiness. We're talking about the story, but I have to talk about the difficulty level because it's part of the story. So, the story is the set. Well, I should start with the setting. Basically, it's 2016, and you're selected as a master candidate, and you're needed to go save the world because the world is supposed to end in 2017. It's been a while since I read the beginning of the story, so forgive me if I mess up the years. But basically, you're enlisted to save the world, and an accident in quotation marks, happens, and you're the final master standing to save the world with your trusty Kohai, Mash. This is not Mash, by the way. This is Gorgon. She appears later in the story, but for right now, she's very big. If you know who it is, good for you. But anyway, this story is about you saving the world from destruction. Both parts, by the way. Part 1.5 is just lax here, but we'll get to that later. So, you save the world. You go on to all these 7 singularities, Fuyuki, which, if you know your Fate lore, this is the original Fate Stay Night city. So, and then Orleans, which is France, Septum, Rome, or the Iberian Peninsula, technically. Okeanos, which is basically an ocean, big ocean. London, obviously London. North American, E Pluribus Unum. I'm sorry if I butchered that. But America, basically. Camelot, which is not Camelot, by the way. Well, that's a story spoiler, so we'll get to that. Well, you'll get to that later, because I've already played. And Babylonia, which is basically the Tigris and Euphrates area. And Solomon, which is basically its own little thing. But I won't get to that because story spoilers. But basically, you'll go through all these singularities, defeat the boss, and claim the Holy Grail, which is basically the MacGuffin that's holding it all together. And it's a singularity, so it's a time point that's disrupted from modern human history. So you'll take the MacGuffin, that's the Holy Grail, that's holding that time the time space disruption together, and return back to the present. That way, history will correct itself, and the time flow will go on normally. Now, once you defeat the final boss of part 1, great. You save the world. You get cash, you get paid, everything goes back to normal. And then you have the gap year. Now, the gap year is main record 1.5. And it's 4 singularities. 4 pseudo-singularities. Technically 5 right now, but I'll explain that later. So, I want to make it very clear. This is not this. These 4 story chapters are not required, but they do help to go into part 2. They help you prep for part 2, so that way you can know at least what the difficulty spike is going to be. Now, the difficulty spike is pretty high when you get to part 2. I'm not going to lie. But part 1.5 will help you, because they introduced when Shinji Gudra, which is the first story in the year time gap between part 1 and part 2, they introduced a new mechanic called break bars. Now, before it was just you beat the enemy, you fight the enemy, they have an HP bar, you reduce it to 0, you defeated it, you won, outside of a guts or a revival. If you defeated the enemy by depleting the HP bar, you won. But they added a break bar. Now, what is a break bar? Now, a break bar is basically when you reduce the enemy's bar to 0, it'll have a little diamond next to the indentation, and it'll break, and it will refill the energy HP bar, and you'll have to work from there again to defeat the enemy, to deplete its HP to 0. Now, I can show you in one of the battles that we have, because right now the 5th anniversary stuff is going on, and we have a boss unit that has the HP or the break bars. Now, this, if you don't want spoilers, I would recommend skipping the next 5 minutes of this video before you head out. So we can do that. There we go. No, that's no. Where are you? That be it? Yes, that is it. Okay, so let's see. That. I'm not going to do it all the way, but because it's just to show you the AP bar, the break bar. Now, this is a story that you'll find in the second part of part 1, and I'll explain the classes right now. So, also the battle system. So, each servant gets 3 skills. You have a HP bar at the bottom above its name. Their class is on the left, and then their HP bar. Now, each of these skills can vary depending on the servant class or on the servant themselves. Since Skazahawk Scotty is a quick caster, well, not a quick caster, but like a quick unit, she helps buff quick servants. So with that, let's buff Kama. And we'll use her skill to make her good against alter egos. I know this is complete overkill, but it's still satisfying to beat him. Now, this is how a normal enemy fight will play out. You would fire your attacks off and deplete his HP to 0. Now, if you have the overkill, then he's dead, but you'll get 8 NP charge out of it, which is great. And then, since the first phase of the battle, we'll move on to the second battle. So, this is the AP break bar. So, you'll see his HP break full at 276,000. And he'll have a lot of buffs. But that's not the important part. So the important part is to get that HP bar down to 0. Or break the AP bar and then reduce his AP bar. So since I can't use Scotty's defense debuff, because he has the little icon for the immune to all debuffs. And then he has increased attack and then gain resistance to all attacks. So I'll just fire off the NP right now. Let's see what do we want to do though. this is the best. Because a little thing that happens when you break his AP bar. Okay. So this is what happens when you break an AP bar. Usually a special effect happens when you break an enemy's break bar. Like that. And usually they'll do... And sometimes they'll fire off an NP and just wipe out your party. But that's what happens. Now I won't show you the full fight because that'll take way too long. But you can beat... If you have the right setup, you can beat this party. Or beat the enemy. It just takes a while, and it just takes a while. I'm not gonna lie, some fights take a while if you're into the stall meta, but some fights are designed, no, you have to defeat this enemy right away if you want to win. But I showed you what happened when the AP break bar broke, and see, when you reduced it to 0, the HP filled back up, and he's now at 318,000. And he's a bad guy. Of course he's a bad. Well, he's the antagonist, one of the antagonists, but that's not the point. So we'll withdraw because I showed you how the battle works, and it's a turn-based RPG system. Now we'll go back. All right. So that's the break bars and some of the gameplay. If you want me to go in depth, I'm just giving you a very general video. If you want me to go in depth, and I would recommend writing in the comments down below and ask me ask me to go in depth in some of the aspects. Now, each of these stories are their own little thing. In 1.5, they're basically their own little contained story. Have no effect on the broader scope of the FGO story, except one, with the exception of one, and it is Shimosa. Now, Shimosa has some implications for the next part of Part 2. We get introduced to some characters, namely Musashi, which, if you unlock it in the rare prison shop, it'll give you her introduction to her story and another character that's in Shimosa. But Shimosa introduces one of the future antagonists of Part 2, as well as Musashi, who plays an important role in Part 2, specifically in Chapters 1 and 5.2 Olympus in Part 2. As for her story, you'll have to find that out because that's, again, spoilers. So I would highly, if you don't feel like doing any of the stories in Part 1.5, I understand. But with the 5th anniversary, with every story chapter you complete, main quest, you'll get a quartz fragment, which will, if you get 7, you'll get a quartz, which is very, very needed. So I highly recommend doing every story chapter you can, and completing the free quest to get more quartz. But out of the 1.5 stories, I highly recommend Shimosa because of its future story implications. Now, on to Part 2. Now, Part 2, there are 7 lost belts now. They're not called singularities, they're called lost belts. The difference is, a singularity was a distortion in space-time in the past. The lost belts are happening in the present now. Why are they happening? Again, story, spoilers, I cannot go into it. But basically you'll play the prologue. After you complete Part 1, you can play the prologue. And then you'll go on to Anastasia, Goddard Damarog, Sin, Synchronized Intellect Nation, Yuga Kastera, Atlantis, and then Olympus. Now, Atlantis and Olympus are connected, so you'll have to... So they're it's still in the same space, but it was so big that they had to split it into 2 stories because of the dense story chapters. And then 5.5 will happen later this year, towards the December area, because they usually do a story chapter in the first half of the year, around June, before anniversary, May, June, sometime before anniversary, and then one in around the December time. And then next year we'll get Lost Belt 6. Now, the story is very difficult, depending on how leveled and prepared you are. You need lots of high-level servants, not rarity, but high-level servants, and strategy before you go into the story chapters, because they'll have break bars. They'll have the enemies will have special buffs. You will have special buffs specifically in some of the story chapters, and some of the servants will have debuffs in the story chapters because of story purposes. And there will be some hopeless fights that you'll have to sit through. But also, especially, and I cannot highlight this enough, you will need a strategy. Look up boss guides for anything for Olympus, because that is one of the hardest story chapters to date, especially in JP, and the hardest story chapter to release in NA. You will need to look up a boss guide for this chapter. I cannot recommend looking up a boss guide enough for this chapter. You can look at Chaldea Gurus. I believe GNA Reviews did a boss battle guide, or you can look up the boss battles on YouTube and see how other players did it. But I highly recommend looking up a boss guide for Olympus, because it's a tough fight. But other than that, I highly recommend leveling your servants after part 1 and just doing the best you can with the servants you have. Now, if you're free to play, you're free to play. I understand. If you're it might take you a while, because I know it did for me when I did it in JP. I didn't have a lot of the high rarity servants, but it's recommended that you look up the boss guide for that and see what servants you have and what you can substitute for that, for the servants they have. But the next thing we'll go into is the main interlude, which is basically some of the stories that are side stories that are related to the main story. So Christmas from the Underworld is one of the stories. It's a Christmas event that happens at Christmas, obviously, and that's connected to the story in part 1. It's a little side event, but it's good, and it's a fun story to read. I mean, all the Christmases in FGO are fun to read. This one is especially fun because it dealt with Ereshkigal, who was part of the main cast in Babylonia, and was very popular for reasons. If you're a Fate fan, you'll know why. The next is Seraph, and Seraph deals with the CCC event. It was a CCC collab back in the day, a few years back, but because of its main story implications for reasons, it was regulated to main interlude, and just recently. Now you can collect your Welfare SR BB, who is a Moon Cancer, and very, very valuable, because she is one of the, as of right now, July 2nd, 2022, to date this video, she is one of 3 Moon Cancers released in NA. And I highly recommend getting her, because, well, obviously she's one of the 3 Moon Cancers, but also she is one, I believe, as of right now, the only single target Moon Cancer. I believe she's the only... Is she the only single target? I believe she is. But anyway, she's, as of right now that I know of, she's the only single target Moon Cancer period. Also in NA, but period as well. Because the currently we'll have we have Jineko, or sorry, Ganesha. Ganesha is a moon cancer. She's AoE arts, and then BB Summer, she's AoE buster, and then in summer we'll have AoE moon cancer, an AoE moon cancer. So, and I believe that's it for the moon cancers, unless I'm forgetting someone. It's been 7 years since this game started. There are some servers even I can miss. Anyway, that's the gameplay. So, or not the gameplay, but the story. Some of the gameplay and story. But we'll get into the gacha now. So how do you get these characters that I mentioned and showed off? So there's the gacha. There's 2 types of gacha. So you'll see right now. This is one of the main gacha. Well, not the main gacha, but like the gacha that you use the premium currency on, the Saint Quartz. A 10 pull is 30 Saint Quartz, and well, technically an 11 pull, because you get a 10 pull plus 1 summon, and then you can use tickets to for singles. Now I've saved up these tickets for summer, so that's a whole nother video by itself. But the Saint Quartz are the premium currency, and then they have, this is to get all the servants. There we go. This is to get the servants. So right now there's Meltrilis up, as well as King Protea for the CCC Seraph main interlude event that happened a little bit ago. And you can get Passion as well, which is highly recommended. They're limited SSRs and an SR, and I highly recommend you get them because they don't have a lot of rate-ups, and I'm not sure when they're going to be back. So I highly recommend rolling for these units as soon as you can. If you're willing to drop some of the money, then I highly recommend Melt. It's a fantastic SSR limited alter ego, and she's a quick turn. So if you have Scotty, or will hope to get a Scotty in the lucky bag, then I highly recommend rolling for her. And King Protea is a good buster AoE unit, as well as Passionate. Suzuka is permanent, so you'll hopefully get her during your rolls when you roll in this gacha for future story events and limited events. And you'll also get the CCCs with Gil and some of the other CCC CEs. Sorry. The CEs are basically the servants' equipment, and they'll help you get special bonuses in the battle that they're in. But for right now, let me show you the second. That's the story gacha that also uses the course, but you don't want to roll that because it's just every non-limited SSR servant and SR servant is in there, and story progression, and it unlocks with story progression. But you don't want to roll that. You just want to wait until the pickup banners are up. Now, this is the second type of gacha. This is a friend point gacha. Friend points are basically what you use for the bronzes and then the silvers and the CEs that you use. And you can also get 4 and 5 star EXPs, as well as the 3-star versions of the EXPs. Now we can do a friend point gacha that you can do 1 per day. And let's see what we get. So this is the summoning screen. It'll turn around and you'll see, okay, that's a foe. Now if these help you enhance their servant, these won't give you anything special, and that's an ember, one of the lowest rarity embers. And for CE, okay, here's a servant. So this will have a servant card will usually appear. This is a berserker, so it'll be Eric Bloodaxe. It'll show the class card, and it'll unveil the class card, who the character is, by obviously unveiling them. And you'll see what servants you put. Now it's the class card were different. So that was a bronze servant. This is a CE, one of the CEs that you can get in the friend point gacha. But basically, how the CEs and the servants will appear in here, it'll appear in this gacha. The Saint Quartz summon as well. Now that I showed you, we can skip. So you'll get at least a CE and a few CEs, and then some of the servants and the normal Saint Quartz gacha I won't pull right now because Castoria's tomorrow, and yeah, I don't want to roll on the on the Saint Quartz gacha right now because I really need to save for Castoria. Who is Castoria? Well, I'll show you when I do that video. But basically, this is how it'll be. You'll see some 3-star servants in the gacha. And sorry, I keep saying gacha, but in the Quartz summons, there will be no bronze. There will be only 3-star servants and above. Now, as well as CEs, there are 3-star CEs and above. Sometimes you get a 4 or 5-star CE, as well as a 4 or 5-star servant. However, unless you're doing this special 5th anniversary thing, which is only CEs and the 5-star, or only the anniversary CEs, and then then one of the servants can pop up if they feel like it. But for the gacha, now, where is it? Okay, so for a 5-star servant's 1%, a 3-star servant's or 4-star servant's 3%, and the 3-star is 40%. The 5-star craft essence is 4%, 4 stars 12, and then the 3 stars 40. So mostly get 3-star CEs, which is normal for a gacha game. They can't have too high of a rate, but Saint Quartz, this is very generous with the Saint Quartz or the premium currency. So I highly recommend saving up for the units that you need or want for your team and rolling for them when you can, or if you can. And then it just shows you the pickup servants that are listed, the craft essence, and these are the possible servants that could appear in your rolls down below. But as of right now, there is no pity system in the game. As of right now in NA, they just implemented a pity system in JP about New Year's. But it should come to us in NA soon-ish. It depends on when they add them, because right now we just added a feature that was in the last anniversary in JP that we wouldn't get until next year in NA, but they added it early for us. So it depends on when they add the pity system. It could be this anniversary, it could be next anniversary, or it could be later in the year. We don't know, because what we do know is the banners and all the events up 2 years in advance. So you have time to save and look at the servants that you want for the next 2 years, because we have Clairvoyance EX, and Japan is 2 years into the future, so we can look at the schedule and say, oh, I want to save for that servant. Oh, I want to save for that servant. Oh, I don't want that servant. It's a good system. So, and they won't speed run through the events. No, it takes time, and they'll go at the scheduled pace. And they've been very good at it. But they'll add a little bonus here and there, like some back-to-school events, some surprise banners. But normally they're bait until the main focus appears right after. So like this, because I have Melt and King Protea, I won't roll on this banner, but I would like to get more copies. But I know a Medic Dividing Super Unit is coming, literally not 20, well, it'll be 24 hours, but like not even 48 hours, there we go. 48 hours from now, I won't roll on this banner. But let's get back into it. So I showed you the gacha, and it's very generous. And usually at anniversaries, they're very generous with their Saint Quartz. But I wouldn't recommend starting right now. I would recommend starting after the anniversary rewards have been implemented. so that way you can get all the goodies that we have at the start, when you start your game. Now I showed you all the story, some of the fights, the gacha system. Now let's show you some of the features. So we have the formation, which is basically your teams and your servants. I won't go into that yet. No, I won't go into that because privacy reasons. But I'll show you the enhanced screen, and this will be the enhanced screen. So you'll see servant skills, level up the skills of a servant. Craft essence, which are the equipment that I showed you, which you level up with their craft essences. So you'll see the 5-star craft essences and the 4-star for events, and then some of the 3-star, which is this one is really good. It's 50% aim and peace gauge at the start of the battle when you limit break it. Ascensions, when you basically limit break your servant and go on to the next level cap. Bond level release is basically when servants have bond. The first 5 bonds are easy, then it gets longer from 6 to 10, and each bond level past level 5 gives you quartz, depending on the rarity of the servant. 3, 4, and 5 stars give you 1, 2, and 3 respectively sync quartz, and as well as bond craft essence when you reach level 10. I believe the 1 and 2 star servants give you apples, and in the bond levels 6 through 7 or 8, and then I think 8 or 9 give you quartz, 1 quartz each, and then 10 as well gives you the bond craft essence. And then once you can break that cap and go into levels 11, 12, and 15. 11 through 15, but again, that takes a lot of bond raising, which they get by entering battles, and it takes a long time. I even haven't reached bond level 15, so it takes a while. But it's worth it because each bond past level 10 gives you 30 sync ports, and you can use that for a 10 spin. Command codes are basically enhance the deck or the servant's attack capabilities on their buster cards, their arts cards, and their quick cards, which is basically the types of attacks they can do. I won't go into that because that's a whole nother video by itself. Going into like the little attack characteristics of the servants. Command card enhancement, that is basically selecting their command codes. I can show you. See, each has their little icon on the quick cards that have, and I can level up with the faux pas which we got in the previous anniversary. And each time you get on the daily logins at the end of the week, you get a faux pas. So, but we won't get into that. Append skills, which is the newest feature that they added with the servant coins. You'll get a certain amount of servant coins when you summon a servant, depending on their level. And each of the append skills are basically new passive abilities that can be used in battle. Some servants all the servants have a starting gauge of 20% when you max it out. That's one of the append skills. And then other skills depending on their class or their fate lore, if you will. Like, say, Ishtar has a special attack bonus against rulers. Why? Because if you know your fate lore, her vessel and one of the other rulers' vessels have a certain rivalry going on, and they like to fight with each other. Noble Phantasm, that's basically leveling up their servant super attack, and from 1 to 5, 5 is the max, so it's not like a Genshin system where you have to have 7 of the character to unleash their max potential. No, MP1 is fine. You don't need anything past that. But if you want to your damage a little bit, I highly recommend the leveling up their Noble Phantasm. Phalangenesis is basically, again, limit breaking your servant's level cap with the Holy Grail that you received at the end of the story or event, and just raising their level cap all the way to 100, which was the previous level cap. Now we have a new level cap of 120, and that takes a lot of HP, and I will not go into that because that's a whole nother can of worms and a whole nother video by itself with the servant coins. This is just a broad general video as of this moment. If you want an in-depth video, then write in the comments, hey Tyranno King, can you do an in-depth video? And I will try my best to do an in-depth video of that, of all the in and outs, in-depth mechanics. But that might take a whole hour or two, which I'm not ready right now for. But write in the comments to see if I can, and I'll see if I can do that in certain parts or segments. And then we have the wardrobe, because they like to do special, some of the artists like to do special outfits for the servants depending on the event or the story, and they have you unlock the wardrobe. Like, say, let's see, we have 5, so we can do 5. So I can do this. So I can unlock her story by giving her mats and QP, which is the one of the in-game currencies that we have, and show you a new ascension, which I can do right now. So this is how you'll limit break as well as do the wardrobe, and we'll give you a new face for a new card cover for the unit. Let's give you a little wardrobe unlocked, and then give us a little show or new card art as well as the new sprite art for the servant. And then we'll do that, and that's about it. This is just like I said, this is just a broad general video. If you want me to go in depth, I can, but that's the little tweaks and finer things of the FGO game. But right now, FGO is going to be at its 5th anniversary, celebrating it tomorrow, July 3rd, as of this video's recording. And I highly recommend watching that if you're interested. So that way you can see what all the hype is about for this game. This game has been going on for 5 years in NA, which is amazing, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And also in JP, they're going to be celebrating their 7th anniversary at the end of the month. And again, I am very happy to be part of the FGO community. The story is amazing. The servants are amazing. It will make you cry. It will make you feel things during some of the story bits, because the story is just so well written. Granted, some of the beginning parts of the story weren't all that great, especially in part 1. But once you hit that story mark that you midway through part 1, it's just a roller coaster of emotions from there. And the events are great. The events happen every 2 weeks or so, depending on the story event or the event. Some of the events are 3 weeks long, but that's because it's either a summer event or a collab event, or they sometimes use it to fill in time gaps. But anyway, it's a really good game, and I highly recommend it. I cannot recommend it enough. If you want me to go in depth, I can. I'll make separate videos for that if you want me to. But I will keep making content on this game, and expect a Castoria review, or not review, but summoning video sometime in the near future, when she drops, I believe, tomorrow night or Monday morning. It just depends on when they release. And I will do a Lucky Bag video to show you what the GSSR is. Because the GSSR is, I want to say, one of the best things they could add in a gacha game. It's a guaranteed SSR. Granted, it's only one time, but like, you only need one time. Twice per year. But anyway, this is Tyrannoking097, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and like and subscribe, and comment down below about what you think of this video. If you want me to go in depth, I will gladly do in depth. If you want me to do more videos, like should you play Genshin, should you play Azure Lane, or Seven Mortal Sins Ecstasy, those are some of the games I play. And I will try my best to give you a general info about it. But until then, this is Tyrannoking097, signing out.